Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Bulldog Blast Podcast. This broadcast is written and produced by 7th and 8th graders at Heuvelton Central School. I'm your host, Mrs. Madeline. In our first segment today, Shelby will share what she learned about Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Hi, this is Shelby. Welcome to the Bulldog Blast Podcast. Today, I will be discussing Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was a philanthropist and was the owner of New York Central Railroad. Cornelius Vanderbilt was an American businessman who built his wealth in railroads and shipping. Born poor and having only a poor education, Vanderbilt worked his way into leadership positions in the inland water trade and invested in rapidly growing railroad industry. Nicknamed the Commodore, he is known for owning the New York Central Railroad. He vastly improved and expanded the nation's transportation system. According to historian H. Roger Grant, people often hated or feared Vanderbilt, or at least considered him an unmannered brute. While Vanderbilt could be a rascal, he was much more a builder, being honorable, shrewd, and hardworking. On December 19, 1813, at the age of 19, Vanderbilt married his first cousin, Sophia Johnson, daughter to Nathaniel Johnson and Elizabeth Hand. They moved into a boarding house on Broad Street in Manhattan. Vanderbilt was born May 27, 1794, in Staten Island, New York. He died January 4, 1877, at the age of 82 in Manhattan, New York.
Thank you, Shelby. In our next segment, Maya and Asa interview Mrs. Linda Wood, a local historian.
I'm Maya. And I'm Asa. And today we are here with Mrs. Woods. She's a historian of Heuvelton.
In the town of Oswegatchie. Yeah.
Okay. What interested you in being a historian?
I never thought I would be, but as growing up, I was always interested in the older things in the house, and they were my ancestors, and I was just always interested in the past. The opportunity came up back about 4 years ago, an opening for the town and village historian, and I applied for it, and I got it, and I'm learning as I go.
For our next question, who founded Heuvelton?
That was Nathan Ford was the original land buyer. And after that, Jacob Vanden Heuvel purchased 1,800 acres in this area. And he had money to invest in the town for mills and different type of employment. And so he financed most of it. 1832, he legally changed his name to Jacob Van Heuvel, and the town was changed to the name from Fordsville to Heuvelton in 1832.
Okay. Are there any buildings still remaining from when Heuvelton was, first established?
The oldest ones that I can find are the Blue Mansion, which is one that Jacob Van Heuvel built, which is where Coach David Steele lives. So that used to be Van Heuvel's house. And that was 1834, the Blue Mansion was built. And then near the bank, to the right side of the bank, Dan Giffen owned that house, and it was built approximately 1830. And you know where KY Deli is, that stone deli right at the bridge? That was built in 1853, which was originally a grist mill, a tannery. It had a lawyer's office above it, and a whole bunch of other things since then. Also, 1856, Pickens house was built. It's called the Grove Hotel at one point, but it's down the street from Pickens at the very end of York Street.
Do you know of any haunted places in Heuvelton?
I've been asking around. They say that the John Pickens house, the one I just talked about at the end of York Street, The woman that lives there was a previous historian, and she said that she hears voices of little girls playing and giggling upstairs, running around, which they were the granddaughters of John Pickens Sr., and they grew up in that house, and then they moved away, and they became opera singers. They sang for, well, Bessie and Jessie. They sang for the King and Queen of England and over in France and different places around the world.
That's really cool.
Other than that, there's a house on the corner of Union and Lisbon Street that have complained that there have been strange things going on, and also at the end of Lisbon Street, right before you go out of town towards the boat launch, the house on the right has been, and other people have said theirs was, but I just haven't, there's been no evidence or no. Also the Blue Mansion, I read an article back in the 1800s where it said that after Van Heuvel moved out, the Blue Mansion was supposed to be haunted too.
I don't know if it'd be like, I could live in a haunted house. I feel like it'd be cool at first, but after a while I just...
I guess it depends how bad it is, eh?
Yeah. One of the girls in our group, her house used to be a stagecoach inn.
There used to be different stagecoach coaches back in, the first ones were for the mail. The stagecoaches started in 1853 delivering the mails. Back then they were plank roads. They were just boards on the road, which were very rough. And they also had tolls every so many miles where you would have to pay a toll to use the road, and that helped pay for maintain the upkeep on the road. The stagecoach ran from Augsburg to Heuvelton to Canton Falls. Canton was called Canton Falls at the time, and Herman. And it started out, there was 2 stagecoaches per day going each way, and then it became 4 per day.
Okay. Do you know of any famous places in Heuvelton?
Any infamous places?
Infamous, I haven't really read where there was, but the only place I could think of, and it's not really a place, but is the river. They had a lot of drownings.
Wow.
Different places along the Oswegatchie.
I don't think we really need to do this question. I think you already kind of gave us a brief history of Pickens Hall.
Oh, no, I got more. It was built in 1856 to 1858. John Pickens was an Irish immigrant. John Pickens Sr. He came over with his family. And the stones that built the building were carried from Ogdensburg. People with wagons would drive by and pick up the stones for them. Do you know where on the Ogdensburg Road, as you're going down the hill in the curve?
Yeah.
Just past the Eelwire Road, there's a stone quarry in there, a great big deep pit that's filled with water now, and that's where the stone quarry was. And when they brought the wagon load back of stones, it was said that John Pickens would give them a quart of whiskey as pay. And there was, it started out as a dry goods store. He had a lumber yard in the back. In the building, the Heuvelton Bee newspaper was down in the cellar at one point. A post office was in the building at one point. Also, there's a meeting hall on the second level, an opera hall on the 3rd floor, and they also at one time aged cheese in the basement. It was called Pickens General Store to begin with, and then when his sons got old enough, it was called Pickens and Sons till 1865 when John Pickens Sr. died. Then it was called the Pickens Brothers, and that ended in 1873. So it was in the Pickens family for 17 years after they built it. And after that, the building was owned by various people like the Woodsides, the Doucettes, Woods IGA, Danny Mac's shoe store. There was a dentist office and also a meat market. So a lot of things have gone on in there.
When was Heuvelton Bridge built?
You know where York Street is? This street right here. That originally, when they laid out the village, was supposed to be one of the main streets. And they had 3 wooden bridges built down there. That was where they first settled at the end of York Street. But all the 3 bridges got washed away by the ice or the floods. So then that was 1802. The 3 different bridges were built. And then in 1847, they came over to State Street, and they built a covered bridge. That washed out. In 1862, another covered bridge. And then in 1875, an iron trestle bridge. In 1916, a concrete bridge. And then this last concrete bridge, was 2010. So there was a total of about 8 bridges.
Wow.
In 2 different locations.
Okay. When was Heuvelton Central School, when was it built?
The school itself was in October of 1822. Van Heuvel bought the land for the building to go on it. There was a 1-story stone building constructed there. That burnt in 1852, rebuilt, and served as a local school until 1874. Then a large 2-story building frame was built, known as the Union Free School. And by 1948, the Union School was getting too small, so the building was taken away or torn down, and it was proposed a centralized school district. So that meant all the little 1-room schoolhouses would no longer be used down the side roads, and everybody would be brought into this one building. And that was 1953 was the first commencement exercise in the building. And they've continued to add on over the years. Before that, they used to have the graduations at the town hall because they didn't have an area big enough.
Thanks, Asa and Maya. Stay tuned for part 2 of their interview with Mrs. Wood next week. This concludes episode 3 of the Bulldog Blast Podcast. We hope you'll tune in for our next episode.